All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We have a nice group of people here for this version and episode of Hunting for Silver Linings for this Friday, June 5th, 2020. Hosted today by Corey Hart and George Katsanos, and our special guest, we have Gabi all the way down from Brazil, and excited to check in on what's going on with her community of entrepreneurs, investors, and startups. We're brought to you by Startup Grind, the world's largest startup community. We have 600 plus chapters in over 125 countries. Startup Grind operates with a mission to educate, inspire, and connect, and we're driven by three values: make friends, not contacts; help others before you help yourself; and give before you take. Now, the pandemic has been and will continue to be the great global leveler. As entrepreneurs, we do our very best for our businesses, our teams, our families, and we should be informed, rational, analytical, and rigorous in our thinking. We should also learn to control our biases as they emerge in various circumstances. We invite you to join us live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time as we track the intersection of these facts, biases, and action through our review of global financial markets alongside check-ins with Startup Grind chapter directors, entrepreneurs, and ecosystem stakeholders from around the world. Now, no one has a crystal ball, but if we keep our eyes and ears open and pay attention, we may be able to see around the bend, and with some luck, spot the silver linings that are around every cloud. Now, if you missed the live events, you can catch the recordings at startupgrind.com/grand-rapids, where you can also download the reading notes and the news items from the show. Before I introduce George for our global market update, a little bit of housekeeping. Comments made and views expressed by all participants in this podcast are not intended to invite or incite individuals, entrepreneurs, or investors to buy or sell financial assets, real assets, commodities, futures, and/or options. The purpose of this podcast is to educate and to inform, not to trade or to invest. If you feel compelled to trade and/or invest, please call your broker. And remember, however, risk is everywhere, even when you think that you're not taking a risk. Now, with all that, it is my pleasure to introduce to everyone George Katsanos to get us started with our catch-up of what the global markets are thinking.
Thank you, Corey. Appreciate everyone in the team joining us today. In case you have not noticed, the world is green again. We have noticed and we have witnessed the largest meltup, not meltdown. The meltdown was about 2.5 months ago. Now we have noticed the biggest meltdown in economic history. Across the world, the equities market is green. The reason we look at the global financial markets in terms of currencies, bonds, commodities, and equities is because we are entrepreneurs and we're risk takers. As both entrepreneurs and risk takers, we actually look at the current financial markets and we try to understand what signals they are giving us. For instance, when you look at the currency market, you see the dollar weakening. It traded as high as 113 today, above 113 against the euro. The yen is weakening. It's 109.7 against the dollar. This has been a tremendous decline in the yen over the last week or so. Risk assets are back on. Sterling is strengthening, 126. Aussie dollar, 0.69. Canadian also strengthening. Across the board, we see that the bets are on that the recession is over, that the world economy will continue to recover. And the best indicator is essentially the bond market. When we look at the bond market, you will see that Japan is trading at 0.04%, again, close to zero, no major move here. Australia is at 0.08. The movement has been significant. We're talking about 22 basis points so far this week alone. India, still under 6%, 5.83. Singapore at 1%, and South Korea at 1.4. When we look at what is happening in Europe, on the other hand, what we have here is a classic indication that things are beginning to improve. The 10-year yield of the German Bund is at 0.28. You remember at the peak of the crisis, we saw it at minus 0.55, minus 0.6 occasionally. Switzerland has been trading equally from a low of minus 0.6 to now minus 0.3. Italy, solid 1.4, Greece 1.3. These are the laggards in the European recovery, and they seem to be doing very well. In the US, the 10-year bond continues to show that investors are moving out of conservative assets like the fixed income bonds to the more riskier assets. So the 10-year is just under 1%, 0.93. Mexico is 6.18, 6.2%. And essentially what we're seeing is a confirmation that the Federal Reserve has actually been very successful in putting a floor behind the collapse caused by the pandemic. Energy, West Texas Intermediate, almost $40. Who would have thought? About a month and a half ago, around the 20th of April, we had oil traded minus 40. So from minus 40 to plus 40, $80 move, unprecedented. Brent at 42, unprecedented. Gold, 1683, below 1700. It will test the lower end of the range of 1650, 1750 that we've seen so far. And the reason is investors are beginning to see that the worst is over and growth is taking place. The best indication for that is copper. We have suggested that our entrepreneurs and our investors look at copper as a surrogate for manufacturing growth. This is actually moving very rapidly. Copper has been well bid, and we expect that the market will continue to be positive. On agriculture, we've seen some minor movements. The reason for that is because we have plenty of supply of corn, wheat, soybeans. We have also the recovery in the wheat market, and live cattle is trading at 96.63. And now let's go back to the equities markets so we can actually see what is going on. Asia, all green. Nikkei, almost 23,000. Hang Seng, 24,770, the Hong Kong index. Singapore, Australia, overall tremendous growth. Europe, the same story, everywhere growth. The United States, in case you haven't missed it, Dow is up almost 1,000 points today. Why has that happened? Very clearly because the economy seems, as Bloomberg says, ready to roll back. Against this background, we always counsel that entrepreneurs, investors, although they remain hunters for the silver lining, they're cautious. This exuberance covers a lot of weaknesses, structural and systemic weaknesses that we have seen over the last few months, from healthcare to economic fundamentals. We need to be cautious and aware of the fact that this rally anticipates further growth in the economy. My only counsel is please keep on reading the news, sophisticated news, detailed analysis by experts, and continue to be careful. Back to you, Corey.
Thank you, George. Yeah, it's been a wild ride. Will continue to be so. And you and I are both, as we've talked about before, we come from that contrarian point of view. So we see something like this happen today, and we have to take pause. You know, we don't just immediately start drinking the champagne, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and against that backdrop, I was speaking with Gabi before we started recording. So we'll be peppering in some of these details in our discussion with her. But I would like to get to now just introducing her from the get-go. So Gabi, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you participating with us today.
Thank you, Corey. It's an honor to be here with you guys. Amazing job. And thank you, George, for all of the information. And it's really nice to be here talking to you.
Awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about your chapter? We'll start with your chapter. So, you're Brazil, but where in Brazil? Give us some context so we can understand your community, maybe the size of your community and your ecosystem, just a high level
Okay, so I'm chapter director of João Pessoa. João Pessoa is a city, is the capital of a state. Here in Brazil, we are divided by states as well. And our state is Paraíba, and we are in northeast Brazil. So we are by the northeast, by the coast. So yeah, we're kind of far from São Paulo. So people from around the world know a lot about São Paulo and Rio. These are two cities on the southeast. So it's about 3 hours from here by plane. So we are a little bit far. So João Pessoa is on the northeast Brazil. We have about 800,000 population. So the city, we have about 800,000 people. And yeah, so I'm located here. Our startup community is very new, it's very young, I would say. We have a lot of startups. The last year was a really strong movement of startups opening up, but we still don't have, still don't have is a investor scene that is very strong. So we do have startups, but we don't have many investors here in the city. So that's basically how the scenario looks like as of right now. Well, before the pandemic, of course. And yeah, so that's kind of the entire scenario for the city of João Pessoa.
Okay, great, cool. Really appreciate that that level of context. That's helpful for everyone around the world who's not familiar with your city. Now, I'm also interested in your personal journey. So, I learned that you studied in the United States for some college, and then you work with a startup there in your city also. So maybe a little background on you and how you came to this opportunity for being a Startup Grind chapter director.
Yes. So was when I was 17 here in Brazil, I knew I would like to work with marketing. And here in my city, another thing as well is that we have a lot of people working for the government. It's a very government-minded city. So the business scene when I was 17, so that was 2009, kind of like that. It was not very strong here in João Pessoa. So I knew that if I wanted to work with marketing and with business, I would have to leave the city, right? So I used to play tennis as when I was young. But what I did was I applied for American colleges. And because of the tennis, I got a scholarship and I got to study in Delaware for 4 years for my bachelor's degree in international business and for another year for my MBA with concentrations in marketing. So from 2010 until 2015, I was in the US studying, getting my degree and also playing tennis. It was a very, very amazing experience. My heart goes to the US as well. I feel like I'm Brazilian and American because it was really cool. So I learned a lot as well. And then I came back to Brazil. So as I told you, São Paulo is one of the biggest cities here in Brazil. So as soon as I came back, I had a job here at Viacom Networks, which is a huge company in São Paulo, well, around the world, but in São Paulo it's very, very big. And Viacom is basically the owner for MTV, Nickelodeon, and all of these channels. And I had a job there. So imagine, I just left college. I had a job opportunity at a huge company. I could not, just not go. So I went to Sao Paulo. I lived there for a while, for 1 year. And then I came back to João Pessoa. So it was kind of doing my way back through Sao Paulo. And I came back to João Pessoa. I dove right into the marketing market. So I started working with marketing agency, with digital marketing and all of that. I don't know if you've heard about marketing agencies, Corey, but it's a very different scenario. It's a very stressful scenario. So I got to a point where I was very tired of my routine, and I just looked on Google, entrepreneur course in Toronto. And the first option, I clicked on it, I shopped. I was like, okay, that's it. I'm going to Toronto. So I went to Canada. I took this course for about, it was a 1 month course. And that's when I put together marketing and entrepreneurship. So I studied a little. I studied the Canadian market for a while. And I actually tried to find a job in Canada, you know, with all of the papers and all of that. But for South Americans, it's very hard when we talk about legislation and, you know, everything that you need for the documents. So I spent 4 months doing that in Canada. Then I came back to Brazil. And when I came back, I was like, okay, that's it. I'm gonna be an entrepreneur. I'm gonna open my company. You know, I know what I'm gonna do. So it's kind of like this light went on, and I was like, okay, my purpose in life is to help people find their purpose. You know, because here in Brazil, the youngsters, we are very young when we need to decide what is our career that we want to follow through our lives. So when we are about 17, we have to take these SATs in Brazil, and we have to decide, okay, I'm going to be a doctor or I'm going to work with marketing. So we have to decide very young, and that ends up on very unhappy professionals, because when you are so young and you have to decide on something so serious and you have to follow through it, you just realize that sometimes what you decided when you were 17 is not what you want when you are, you know, 22 or 24. So I decided that my purpose was that. So when I came back from Canada, I was like, okay, this is my business. I'm gonna do it. And I started going to meetings. I went to São Paulo. I went to an innovation festival. And when I came back to Joao Pessoa, I did this meeting. And in this meeting, this guy told me, okay, just go to a company called Fabwork, and they're gonna help you out with your purpose. And I was like, okay. And then I went to Fabwork. I met Miguel, that is actually listening to us right now. And Miguel said, okay, we can do this together, right? So but I'm actually interested on hiring you as my head of marketing for my startup. And I felt like my purpose was very aligned with the company's purpose, so it made sense, you know, like everything made sense on that point. So on September 2018, I decided to go to Fabwork. In the beginning, it was a company to deliver courses for professionals on agile management, negotiation, and all of these different abilities for the professionals of the future that we call. That actually there isn't professionals of the future is actually right now, but we used to call that. And the beginning, the company was basically on the focus on the courses, right? And then that was very aligned with my purpose of helping people to find their purpose. So I just got into to Fabwork, and I started working there as head of marketing. So that was kind of my entire journey in 5 minutes, but I hope it was clear. I don't know if you understood everything.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems to me, it appears to me that you are the perfect kind of person that your region needs, um, to help foster a really great like ecosystem. You were telling me how the ecosystem is still kind of in its early stages, and a lot of that um, is down to mindset, right? And let me know if you can't hear me because of the connection or whatever, but if I have to repeat myself. But I'm curious to hear about um, your perception of coming from Canada, working in Canada and the US with school, and then taking that mindset to Brazil, where you are talking with these new entrepreneurs and the youth about what their lives could be, right?
Exactly. So it's a very hard task, right? It's like when you leave a city and you see the world and you see all of the opportunities, and you're like, okay, I have to take this back home because I know that people can gain from it, people can learn from it. It's a very hard task when it can be very frustrating, because having the right mindset, we talk about mindset a lot here, and I think everywhere around the road now. But is what we don't realize it is that we have to be very resilient to maintain that mindset, to maintain that discipline of trying to, you know, to be innovative all the time and trying to make the companies and the communities grow. You have to have a lot of resilience, and you have to be very strong in your mind in order to be able to implement. Because of course, I can see things around the world and I can try to implement it here, and it's not going to work as well. Sometimes it's not what the community needs. So that's what, when I found a person, when I found a company where that could help me out in doing that, and when I saw that, okay, I'm not alone, like when I saw that there are a lot of people that think like me and they are here, that made a difference, right? So when you realize you're not alone and that you have people that think a lot like you and that want the same thing, that made a difference here. And that's how I was able to start thinking of that. And then Miguel, amazingly enough, the owner of the company of Fabwork, he was like, okay, there is this amazing community called Startup Grind. Do you know it? And I was like, no, I never heard of it. I have no idea what you're talking about. He was like, okay, just take a look, see if you want to be the director, because I think that's exactly what he said. I think that's your profile. I think you should do it. And I did some looking, I did some digging, and I loved the three values. Everything made a lot of sense. And I contacted Startup Grind, and they did all of the steps. I think it was like 8 steps, and that we do to be a director. And I took it, and they approved me, and I was really, really happy because I saw that it was an opportunity to actually find a lot of people that have this mindset. And if I don't find them, I can actually kind of create this mindset inside of them. So yeah, Startup Grind made a lot of sense in that scene.
Yeah, cool. Well, I do want to ask one more question about your Startup Grind ecosystem or your ecosystem, and then we can move on to maybe some more of the general business stuff for your region. What is the makeup of your Startup Grind chapter or the ecosystem in general? Is it more startups and founders, or is it, is there? You said that investment was kind of an issue for you. Is it a lot of students?
Yeah, so the community, it's a lot of starters, a lot of entrepreneurs in the beginning, right? In the early stage where you have an idea and you're starting to implement it. So there are a lot of people on that stage. There is a lot of people on a stage where they're already running their product, but they're not stable, right? So it's still in the beginning stage. We have a lot of students here that are very interested on the scene, so they are very active. They are here in Brazil. There is a thing in Joao Pessoa is very strong, where in the universities you have groups of young people, of young students, that they open their own company. So they open a company that is connected to the college, and they charge really low prices in order to offer a great service that they will provide. So, for example, they have a company that actually helps other companies with marketing, right? So they have a marketing agency that is made out of students and students of that college, usually public universities. Here in Brazil, the public universities are very, very strong. So they do the marketing job for another company for a low price, but they get the experience, they get to get into the real world. So the young people here are very active in that sense. So we have that. So we have those people involved in that community of, companies that are connected to colleges. We have early stages entrepreneurs. And then when you get to the top of the border of the funnel, we have many companies and startups that are already stable, and they already have their business running. They're thinking about investments, or they're thinking about growing and scaling. So we have all of this stages. But of course, when we see the funnel and we see that the top part where people get in, it's a lot of people in the early stages of thinking and having an idea and getting to go into the world. When we talk about investment, as I said, investors, we don't have many. Communities are built up with universities and investors and VC capitals. Here, the investors are still in the really, really early stage, so we don't have that many in the community.
Awesome, thank you very much. So we had a good question from Cal, who's part of our ecosystem here in Michigan. it's kind of related. So it's really great to hear that you have the university and higher education support like that. What's the support from the government and political leadership is for startups? Are there specific programs related to it? Are there like visa
Yes,
programs or incubator programs?
there are some incubator programs. There are some, so those companies that run together with the universities, that is a huge, huge thing, because here in Brazil is different from the US in kind of a sense where the public universities, they're amazingly good, and they're amazingly connected to the entire community. So they do have a lot of programs that help out in that sense. Um, but here, when I talk about politics and government here in Brazil right now, we are in a stage where everything is not stable, right? Because we, I don't know if you've heard, but we have a president that is a little bit um, off in
Yeah,
some senses.
I
Um,
read the stuff about Bolsonaro all the time, and
yeah, I don't know if I'm allowed to have my political opinion here, but I am not a fan. So everything is kind of shaky, nothing is very secure. And if we are talking about context and what we are living in right now, things are just very, very, we just don't know, what's going to happen. Everything's kind of not very stable right now.
yeah, and we'll want to touch on a little bit of that in a bit. I'm curious um, to discover what are the big or primary sectors for business in your region of there, João Pessoa.
So technology here is growing a lot. So when we talk about developing technology, it's a business that amazingly is very surprising for me. So it's gaining a lot of market. People are consuming a lot of technology, a lot of high end technology, and people are developing a lot of technology. So everything is running. It's kind of, I don't know if it's because I'm inserted in that world, but the technology business, when we talk about artificial intelligence, when we talk about coding, everything is going around that. And I feel like that's around the world, but here is very, very strong. Um, yeah, so that's basically the biggest market that we have right now over here that is growing a lot. That's basically it. Yeah.
Is there being a town of 800,000 people? Is there agriculture or are there other sectors like that?
Yeah, so we do have agriculture is very, very strong in Brazil as a whole. Here in João Pessoa, I'm gonna be honest, I don't have a lot of knowledge of that, of those markets. I don't have a lot of experience or contact. I did went to an event of agriculture about 6 months ago, and they're trying, what they're doing with the market is that they're trying to put technology into it a lot, so using data, and they're trying to work with that. But here in João Pessoa, agriculture, I don't feel like, at least is not in part of my community where I with people that I talk to. But it is very big here in Brazil. It is a huge market. It is a market where the money is going, a lot to it, especially now. So it is a market that if I were to advise someone to go into, yes, agriculture would be a nice market to go into and to do some research here in Brazil.
I think George put a question in the chat was regarding like access to capital. You'd mentioned like investment was something that is lacking in some regards, but for startups, is it fairly easy to get some of that early capital?
No, no, not very well. Here in João Pessoa is not that easy, um, because as I said, when once you don't have the investors, you don't have the capital, you don't have the connections to get that money. So not not that easy right now.
Um, Great. So, also want to talk a little bit about the some of the people that are doing some of the really exciting things that in reaction to what's happening in the world. So, are there some stories, whether it's people, process, or products that you're aware of that have innovated in these last weeks, months, that you can point to or highlight?
Yeah, so here a lot here in Brazil we used to have this habit of going to the restaurants all the time, to go eat with your family outside of your house. Here now the businesses changed, everything's closed, so all of the restaurants they had to adapt, they had to hire new people to do the delivery for them. So everything that was related to restaurants and all of that segment changed. The process changed. People are developing their apps to connect to their final customers. So that sector changed a lot here in Brazil. So that kind of process and business, it's a business that changed really badly here. And yeah, for the process of technology is that I right now I cannot, it doesn't come to my mind another, if you have an example where you want to put in, but I don't know if I answered right.
Oh yeah, we're just there's maybe some people in your startup grind community that are coming up with some innovations, um, and so some of our directors that we're talking to, like this is a time where they can be like, oh yes, we have this person over here. She is developing this or whatever. I don't know if
Yeah,
there's
so
anyone.
yeah, so here, well, in the community, we do have a very strong, well, one of the first, I think was the first guest that I took to the program. She's a entrepreneur here in Brazil, and she talks about women entrepreneurship. And what she did was she started doing all of these programs with courses and capacitations and teaching the women here in Brazil online, doing all of the marketing segment for them. So everyone is kind of going to, I think there's no other way. When you talk about COVID and what is going on, everyone is turning to online. So when we talk about digitalization, that's happening a lot here. So when you talk about this, digitalization is a process that used to be analog, now is coming to the digital, and everyone is doing that in their businesses here. So when we talk about innovation, I see changes, right? So COVID forced that on entrepreneurs. That's what it's doing. You have companies that before were very reluctant to go digital. Now they have to. So that's what the entrepreneurs here are doing. So the digital process is getting a lot into the innovation and into that segment. I feel like innovating is doing something different, right? To get different results. If I talk about our personal experience with fab work, we used to do people to eye contact and courses. Now we are doing capacitation. We used to be B2C, so business to customers. Now we are B2B, so it's business to business. So that's kind of a huge step, and that's what's going on. So the digitalization process is bringing the innovations to every business that we have here, right? So I don't have the only specific example that I could give you and that I'm inside and that I'm working on daily, day by day, is the fab work, which is we used to be B2C, now we are B2B. We used to do everything by person, now we're doing everything online and all of the meetings and all of that. So that's it. Like the innovation is inside of every digitalization process for basically all types of companies right now.
Sure, and that's including like healthcare.
Yeah, so there are many programs here. Well, not in João Pessoa that I know of, but in Brazil you don't have to go to the doctor. the first step used to go, okay, just let's go, you know, like you leave your apartment and you go to the doctor. Now you do a consultation online, you do everything online, you contact everyone online. So everything that is been doing, everything that people can do inside their homes, they're doing it, right? So that's for healthcare, that's for you know, all of the markets.
So the thanks for all of that. Now we also like to ask about what your people in your community are feeling and reacting to, like right now. So, um, for what I mean is, so you mentioned before we started recording that because Brazil is seeing a rise in cases for coronavirus, COVID right now, that a lot of entrepreneurs are still in that early crisis mode where they are not sure what's happening today, tomorrow, next week. What are some of these conversations that you're having with your community? Because I imagine as the chapter director, people are reaching out to you, like, what is happening? What am I supposed to do? How are some of those
Yes.
conversations going?
Yeah, so what is going on now is that people are trying to get to know their market, right? So they're trying to understand where their customers are, who are their customers right now. So they're kind of going back to the beginning of the business where you're looking at your market and your personas and the people that are gonna consume your product, and you are analyzing them and seeing where they are and how you can achieve them, right? So that's where the entrepreneurs are going now. So they're going back to the early stages of the business, trying to identify their personas, their target market, and rebuild based on that reality, based on where their customers are right now. So that's what is going on. Most of the people that reached out to me, they had exactly that questions, like, Gabi, where are my customers, who are they, what is going on, what can I do to reach them in the right time, at the right moment, with the right content. So that's what is going on right now. I feel like the focus went a lot to the communications and to the communication and to the marketing process, because you gotta start talking to your customers, you know, in a different way when you see the COVID, when you see what is going on with the world. So the what the entrepreneurs are doing is that they're revisiting who are their customers, what they can do to reach out to them. And that changes daily, you know, that changes weekly, because
Hmm.
once you're planning your content, you're planning what you want to communicate. That is a very, very daily business, a very daily job, once you're talking about the COVID reality and what is going on with the world right now.
Thank you. What we saw here in the U.S. was that majority of our small businesses and medium-sized businesses had only a few days of cash or a few weeks of cash at most on hand, and so their runway was very, very, very short. Um, and that is largely due to our mindset here. Um, what's the experience for small and medium businesses in your ecosystem?
Yes, it's the same. It's the same. It's the same. I wouldn't say the same mindset, but it's the same reality. Because people weren't expecting. They weren't. No one was expecting what was going to happen. Here in Brazil, it's true that we did have a lot of time to, since when the pandemic happened in China, in Italy, we were seeing and we were looking at the world, but it seems like the people weren't realizing that it was real and that it was going to arrive in their cities, right? So here in João Pessoa, that happened as well. No one prepared cash wise. No one was expecting. So it's a very stressful time when people don't have the capital, we don't have the investors to go through. So that's the very center of the discussion here in Brazil, because once Bolsonaro defends the finance defends the businesses, and that the business should be open, because if they close, then they'll have the money. People are defending the life and the health system, where that's when the government should get in and start helping the entrepreneurs on that sense, right? So once you close your store, you have to close it because of health issues, right? So the government should go in and help the companies that are not gaining their money right now. So that's where the discussion is, and that's why the discussion here is so strong. People did not prepare, so probably many businesses are going to close doors because of that, right?
Yeah, I'm wondering if George, depending on his connection, has some sort of last questions.
First of all, I would like to thank Gabi for her contribution. Gabi, it is very, very interesting, the journey that you have embarked on, both before and during Startup Grind. I think the key point that we all share as entrepreneurs, as risk takers, is we have to have a positive mindset. We have to believe in the power of innovation. And we have also to always be able to share our knowledge and expertise. What we have done here with Corey is we try to open the dialogue to all members of the Startup Grind community and make sure that everyone understands that we're here to help and we can share our experience and our expertise with you. So don't be afraid to contact us at any given point. The second point I wanted to make is very simply that at the beginning of the startup process, you have friends and family. Essentially, you have angel investors as well. The history of entrepreneurial venture capital started with many thousand years ago. As you remember from the early stages of economic development through angel investors. Do angel investors play a big role in your network? Do you expect them to play a bigger role later on?
Yeah, so we expect them to play a big role, but as of right now, we don't have that many options for angel investments. If I am going to be honest, we have none here that I know of that are very strong. So as I said, the when we talk about investors here is very young. The scene is very young for investment, right? So we do have the ideas, we do have the entrepreneurs, we do have the market, but we don't have the investor scene very strong here in João Pessoa. So even angel investments, they do play a big part. Of course, if once you talk about angel investments, you're kind of talking about one person that is very interested in a certain business. So we do have isolated cases, but it's still very young, very small scene here in João Pessoa.
Cool. George, do you have anything else?
One thing, sure, George.
The next point that I wanted to bring is that you're located in probably the largest economy in Latin America, and you have ample natural resources, which means that the digitalization process should be supported by all these entrepreneurs. Do you have any examples whereby successful entrepreneurs in any of the economic sectors have come back to sponsor venture capital, early stage investments?
I'm sorry, George. I could not hear you. The last part. Can you repeat it?
Yes. Do you have any examples of successful entrepreneurs from any sector, from natural resources, from trading, from real estate, from agriculture, and so on and so forth, industry, who went and started their own, so to speak, in venture capital investment or family office, anything entrepreneurial to support the local community of startups?
So you're asking about companies that want to support the community of startups, right? Real
Or individual entrepreneurs who they became successful and they decided to allocate capital to new ventures.
Okay. And when you're talking about money wise, not knowledge, just
Either, either
either.
money or knowledge or expertise.
Of course, yes. So here we have some companies that have been very successful. We have big companies that are successful here in the area, and they do come back, and they do help with knowledge and actually talking to other entrepreneurs. In Fab Work, one of the main reasons that I was a startup grind director was because we wanted to be the center of those meetings. So talking about successful entrepreneurs and early stages entrepreneurs, and they do come back to help, and they do come back to tell you, this and this and that. This is a good way to do business. This is not a good way. They do come back to pass by the knowledge, right, to tell you how to do things. Once you talk about money wise, investment wise, I don't know. From my point of view, is still not very strong, as I said. So of course, people share their knowledge on the markets and how to do business, which is very important, because that helps a lot with the mindset and with being this resilient and being disciplined. But when you talk about money and investment, it's still very early, and we're still in the beginning stage.
Cool. Thank you for that. Before we wrap up and say our goodbyes, I do want to make sure to to ask you, is there anything that the Startup Grind community can do for you to help you guys out in your ecosystem or with your chapter?
Yeah, so I feel like just connecting, as I said, once we get connected and we talk to people from other countries with different experiences, that helps out on the mindset, that helps out on staying strong and being focused on our goals, and on actually implementing business that make a difference. And of course, as I said, we have a lot of opportunities for investors to come in and to take a look at our companies, and see what kind of businesses make sense to invest on. Because here we do have a lot of competent people that are opening businesses that are actually customer focused, and trying to give a solution to the world. So I feel like that is a way of helping itself, just connecting and showing people the business that we have here. And before we finish, the only two things that I would say, actually the only thing that I would say for entrepreneurs right now would be that you are truly customer centric, right? So a lot of companies, they say they focus on the customer, but they're actually looking for their KPIs, so their metrics. And there's one thing, very interesting thing that I read last week, which is CPIs, customer performance indicators, where you actually see what are the customers indicators that your product was a success for them, right? So I give that advice for the companies that are trying to stay strong. Always look at your customer and see what are their metrics of success once they're consuming your product, your solution. I feel like that's gonna help a lot on being a north in this pandemic, on trying to stay strong and trying to stay focused with your business. I don't know, Corey, if you agree, but that's kind of what is going on with the company's CPIs and KPIs.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like the pandemic has exposed the weaknesses across many things, entire industries, countries, governments, and our businesses. And if we were not already customer focused, we certainly are now if we want to survive. So, George, any last questions or
Exactly.
thoughts?
The last question, or rather, it's a thank you that I wanted to say, and to remind you that you are, as a mayor of your community, um, extend any questions you may have. Corey will always be there, and we will always try to support you in your efforts to build up your community. I think that what we have discovered is that internationalization, globalization is not dead. It is now becoming more intensive, on the contrary. In other words, we see that a younger generation is going beyond the previous limitations. And I think this is wonderful. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much for your efforts in startup in Brazil.
Thank you so much, George. Thank you for inviting me. It's very nice that you guys are having this kind of, attitude and talking to different entrepreneurs. I think this is amazing, and what you presented in the beginning of this episode is very, very nice. And yeah, I think I agree with you. I think that we are all connected in some way, and that we can help each other, through everything that we are going through. And I feel like digital transformation is now what we are all going through, and is there's no way back. So we already gave the steps forward, and it's basically what's going to happen for the future. So yeah, I'm here to help as well, and I'm glad to be talking to you guys. And if you want to talk about that, digital transformation, marketing, and all of those subjects, we are here to help you guys out too. And thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, well, in the next years or whatever, when we get to do in-person things again, we can try to have a meal together, whether it's in Joao Pessoa, or in San Francisco or Chicago. But thank you so much, Gabby. Thank you, everyone else, for attending. I really greatly appreciate the time and attention. And with that, we'll see everyone else on our Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for as we continue to hunt for the silver linings.